Okay, I believe John is here now, and so is Sheldon and potentially Jackson. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Doing well, thank you guys.
Awesome. So John is the CEO of Quebec Innovative Materials Corp. They've made their first significant discovery recently. We're going to be covering that news release. And Sheldon and ThreeD Capital love to fund these types of companies alongside tech companies and startups. Very passionate about the companies they invest in. So he's here to kind of to speak on that. Maybe while we're waiting, John, if you can sort of how did you get involved in the company and the project? Want to go there?
Yeah, of course. So, no, it's been you were asking a question on how the summer's been. It's been a pretty busy summer, with everything going on. We took over effectively the company back in March, recapitalized the company itself. We already had the hydrogen projects that were staked back in 2022 with the help of and the guidance of Marc at INRS. That was the time that the Quebec government started discussing and implementing more and more, and we were getting more and more clarity on what their green agenda would look like. How would they attain their low emission targets that they put forth? They came out back then with a very big hydrogen report, which was mainly focused on green hydrogen. But in that report, there was, small sections of natural hydrogen that were mentioned, and they had hired the INRS. I keep on mentioning the INRS. I'll get to who these guys are. And they had hired the INRS to publish and research natural hydrogen potential in Quebec. And we are very fortunate, and we have a great relationship with the guys at the INRS and Professor LaFlèche. And that's when we started getting more and more involved in the hydrogen space.
Let's cover sort of the last news release and the significance of it, John, if you could.
Well, of course. So the last news release is very significant because it's basically the first significant discovery of natural hydrogen anomalies in Quebec. It's been talked about and it's been a hot subject lately, not only in Quebec, in Canada, even internationally. A lot of people are talking about natural hydrogen, as a way to really decarbonize and everybody to attain those low carb emission targets. And what we've done with the INRS, or partner of the INRS and Professor LaFlèche, we staked, I would say, 90% of, or even more, of really prime land for natural hydrogen in the province of Quebec. And you're talking about just our Ville-Marie project, which is the one that we recently press released. That's around 250 square kilometers. We have then the Lac Saint-Jean area, which we haven't even started working on there. That's another 100 square kilometers. Then you have the Gaspésie, which is another 50 square kilometers. And Professor LaFlèche has been working on this hydrogen project for the last 6 years. They've developed significant soil gas sample methodology for the detection of natural hydrogen. They've identified this area in particular for us to begin our programs on because of the three main factors and characteristics that they look for, which is you have to have a greenstone kind of basement. You have to have a sedimentary overhang on top, and you have to have gas, hydrogen seeping through there. So the the geochemical reaction between the hydrogen and that, you could say iron-rich, uranium, thorium-rich basement takes out the oxygen, allows hydrogen then to develop, and then that hydrogen would seep up, and that's what we're measuring with the soil samples. And what we have in terms of the measurements of the soil samples that we have are really significant numbers. And that was highlighted in the press release. If you compare to other comparable projects around the world, in Australia or in the Pyrenees, in that border between France and Spain, we even put a table in our press release highlighting our numbers are, just on the first, say, line 1, line 2, line 3, we're seeing big hot zones of over 300 ppms. What's the significance of that is in Australia, Gold Hydrogen's project averages between 50 to 100 ppms on their soil samples. Total's project in the Pyrenees, 80% of their soil samples were under 50 ppm. And in our project in the Ville-Marie-Saint-Bruno-de-Guy area, 70% of our samples are over 200 ppm. So it just shows you really the significance of the discovery, and in a really big zone in area. The distance, just to give you a sense, distance between line 1 and line 2 and line 3. So right now we've completed 5 lines. We've only press released line 1, line 2, line 3. Line 4 and line 5, those press releases are coming up shortly. The distance between line 1 and line 5 is 10 kilometers, north-south. East-west, the lines average around 5 to 7 kilometers.
So let me flip this over now to Sheldon and Jackson. You look at a lot of deals, and you invest in some of these. So when and why did you decide to get involved with this project and this team?
All right, I can address that. So first thing, I have to give John total credit of the foresight of thinking about this whole concept of natural hydrogen, because at ThreeD, Jackson and I have been looking at a lot of hydrogen projects because we do believe it's the holy grail in terms of clean, zero CO2 footprint future energy. It's already starting in cars. There are some transportation issues. They're figuring those out. Every country in the world is giving incentives for everything around hydrogen. We know it's going to be coming into the homes. So we were looking at a lot of projects and didn't really know about natural hydrogen in the ground. And what really sort of struck the chord when John, who we work with on other projects, brought this up some months ago, I immediately went back to the experience I had. I have had a lot of oil and gas experience in my career. I've built a couple of very, very oil companies in the 80s. In the 90s, I invested a lot. And then in the 2000s, the only thing I really played was there was a Quebec gas play. It was tight gas in Lac Saint Jean that basically had one of the biggest gas deposits in the world, they thought, but it was tight gas. And so you'd need to frack it to liberate it. And the Quebec government is an extremely green thinking province, and they just didn't want any contamination, water, fracking, just cross the line, just like in the Paris Basin. So, and other jurisdictions in the world that, have just taken that position. But they've been extremely supportive of everything green, battery plants, recycling plants, and so forth. And they had been spending a lot of time doing technical due diligence in the area of Lac Saint Jean and the other areas John mentioned for hydrogen-bearing rocks. And apparently, some of the theory is that the uranium and thorium, which are present, heat up water at the subsurface and basically creates H2O, or not H2O, that's water, but creates hydrogen. And so immediately, I went back to the experience I had then, and I realized that I'm convinced, and I knew because of the Quebec government's disclosures, that there's a lot of gas in northern Quebec. And so to stretch that to hydrogen, to me, made total sense. And then John sent us all these technical documents. We went through them all. So this is all based on science. This isn't part of any hype and so forth. So going through all the technical data, the theories to me really held together that this was definitely hydrogen gas prone. And I didn't really realize that this could be maybe a holy grail. And then John sent us all these comparables, and we started going down the rabbit hole of all these other hydrogen plays on planet Earth. And, he mentioned gold hydrogen in Australia. There was a hydrogen discovery in Mali that 12 years later is still fueling the local village. And then I realized that some very smart money, like the Gates Foundation, is now looking for natural hydrogen. So we looked at it and we go, you know what? This, in terms of risk return, the shares were sub 5 cents and they're sub 10 cents, so it's no real difference. On a risk return basis, this was very compelling. Now, the company also has a silica deposit that we think is commercial. That wasn't our objective or interest here, but it certainly backstops the value of the company. So then as we're getting involved, we go realize, you know what, this is, I think this is definitely worth it. And so we made an investment. And then we started to learn about how, without drilling, you can do these sniffer tests, so to speak. And by the way, the technical team here is top tier. So that was very important to us because, we're not scientific geologists, been around, have experience, have a good nose to sniff, but not hydrogen. So we go, okay, we met with the technical people and we go, again, this is very, very compelling in a province that is totally supportive of gas exploitation. So then we learn about the technology that you can bring to surface where the hydrogen basically seeps and is in the atmosphere. So this is like a geologist, grub staking and doing surface, let's call it, what do you call it? Not exploitation, but prospecting, where in the mining business, you go and you look for rocks. You test those rocks and you go, okay, was there glaciation? Do the rocks represent what could be at depth? Is there any soil samples and so forth? Gives you that indication. Well, in this case, through these machines that recognize and absorb and test these hydrogen signals and hydrogen gas at surface, it's even better than prospecting because it gives you quantitative factors, not just qualitative. So in other words, if there was trace values and okay, it's still worth exploring, but maybe the signatures aren't that great. So I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago, they started the program, and then they came out with these results that we compared internationally to all the other hydrogen companies, and we realized, wow, these are extremely robust numbers. So we made the original investment, and then after that announcement, ThreeD, I go, hey, you know what? This is being de-risked to a certain extent. And listen, our business is to invest in disruptive technologies and disruptive businesses. And so we go, you know what? Risk return, we got to buy more shares in the company. So we did at that time. We reported them. We're an insider, so we reported them as an insider. So again, I have a background in the space, but not in hydrogen. But if we connect all the dots, and this starts to look like it could be a natural hydrogen discovery. Well, back in 2000 to 2010, I can't recall the exact period, I remember there was a company, I think it was Questor or something. I think the shares went from 30 cents to $40 based on the gas discovery. And again, the Quebec government did not want fracking, so it ended it. But it just shows you, and by the way, a natural hydrogen discovery is way more rare than a natural gas discovery. For example, there's lots of natural gas in New York, and they allow fracking and so forth. So this suddenly is a project that I've taken from, okay, this is interesting, and I've brought it back up to one of the most interesting companies that I think we have in our portfolio. And again,
Well,
I give John the credit because back when he did it, no one was talking about that.
okay. Well, I was going to touch on the Quebec, the government and there, and they seem very pro mining. I know that they've got some structures there in place for investors that are really good. Do you want to talk, John, about this team? You've touched on them a little bit. Sheldon brought them up as well, but the INRS team, to someone who's new to the story and doesn't even know who they are, let's talk about them.
And you know what it is, and obviously thank you, Sheldon, for all the support, because this, when we took this over, Sheldon and Jackson were really the cornerstone on that allowed us to recapitalize and allow, for example, Professor LaFlèche and the INRS to do what they do best, which is explore for hydrogen, and so the INRS, who that is. So the INRS is a Quebec-funded research institute. They have the largest and biggest applied geoscience lab in Canada. Okay. Professor LaFlèche, who heads our program, he heads the geoscience lab. He specializes, like I previously said, on hydrogen. For the last 6 years, he's been working on this. He's perfected the soil sampling methodology that is being used here. So, for example, our numbers, a lot of guys, when we initially put out the release, we had a lot of questions always, are these false positives? Why are the numbers that big? And like Professor LaFlèche recently said in one of the conference calls we did with an institutional investor, there's absolutely zero contamination in the sampling and in the methodology that's used. So nobody could really question the high ppm numbers. And going back to the Quebec government here and the INRS is one of our key partners in the project, and we're very fortunate to have them. The Quebec government funded all the recent natural hydrogen INRS research and reports that have been put out, and those are all public, and you could go and see them on the INRS website as well as the Quebec government website. Quebec government recently tabled the Bill 69, which is another bill highlighting hydrogen and their green agenda. And going back a little bit to Sheldon's point on social acceptability, we're very fortunate again in this project, in the area that the project is located. We have tremendous social acceptability. Every time, and I've been to the project, every time, when I meet the mayor of Saint-Bruno-de-Guy, when I talk to the people in the area, what their eyes light up when we talk about, hydrogen naturally produced, no footprint or very small footprint. And we're going to post the videos on our Twitter feed and as well as on our other Instagram feeds on the extraction itself, on what the team is doing on the field, and you see there's basically no footprint.
Can I pause you for a second?
Of course, go.
Are you looking on indigenous land? Are you like what?
No,
Okay.
no, absolutely no indigenous claims or land issues in the area.
Okay. Well, and even, if you were, I was going to ask, if they were, much more friendly to this type of operation, right? Um, but anyways, so can you explain sort of some of the technology that you're using?
Well, it's basically the beauty with hydrogen and any type of hydrogen exploration. You're already using a lot of existing oil and gas methods and technology. You're not reinventing the wheel here. And even from a theoretical standpoint, it's all proven oil and gas methods that are being used here. The only difference and the really big difference here is that there's zero to low carbon or to no carbon emission, and it's as cheap or even cheaper than fossil fuels. Any type of extraction of natural hydrogen is going to cost you around $1 per kilogram. Which is such a significant advantage towards man-made hydrogen, or what people call green hydrogen, which is man-made electricity-made hydrogen. That costs you around, and I'm quoting numbers here, that costs you around $6 to $12 a kilogram.
Yeah, so I have had some questions come in, and people are wondering, John, because obviously you're very passionate about this project, and I'm probably can understand why. How much of this company do you own?
So I currently own around 5 million shares. With options and warrants, I own close to 10 million shares.
Okay, and did you put any hard dollars in yourself?
Of course, yes. In the last financing, I put around $60,000, and I've been regularly buying in the market, as my insider report shows regularly.
Okay, and what is the financial structure of the company? How much capital do you have right now? And it's like easy obtainable information, but I'll just ask it anyway. How many shares are outstanding, fully
Of
diluted?
course, yeah. So we have 95 million shares out between myself, ThreeD, Sheldon, and Jackson. We own around, I would say, 25, maybe now 28 million shares. Then there's a couple of shareholders, bigger shareholders that own, I would say, between another 14 million shares, two other shareholders. So between our group, we would own, I would estimate around 40 million shares.
Okay, so close to half of the float. You're saying is pretty locked up in friendly hands.
Yeah. In terms of the cash, with the recent raise, we're around $750,000 of cash. The INRS budget for all exploration, which is not only the soil samples, because as in the last press release, you have the soil sample program, but then you have a gravity survey that's in September, and an audio magnetotellurgic program, well, it's going to be in October. That program is basically fully funded till December.
Now, is this somewhere you can work all year round, or are you kind of you have to sort of get in there for certain months and get out?
Oh no! You can work on in all three of our projects. You can work all year round. There's infrastructure in all projects. You could drive, for example, from Montreal to the Ville Marie project in 6 hours, and all paved road, and provincial highways. So the infrastructure is in place. The Temiskaming area where the project is located, it's a very recognized forestry area. There's a big plant in the area operated by RIAM, which is a big entity, and they've let go recently 275 people. So that the area is very, very excited and keen on QIMC and the project.
Okay, so what are the potential economic impacts of this discovery for the company and for the local communities in Quebec?
Well, listen, the potential, Professor LaFlèche used the word in the press release, transformative, and that's how we see it as well. It's not, um, these results, we're, how should I put it? We're in reaction mode right now because nobody expected, even Professor LaFlèche didn't expect the numbers that we're seeing and the scale and magnitude of what we're seeing. You know, in terms of the hot spots, in terms of we're already in line 4 and 5 and still hitting significant numbers. We've doubled the personnel that's in place right now. We've brought in more people. We're bringing in more equipment, and we're starting now a 9-kilometer north-south line that's going to cross all that discovery and all that zone. So it's a very, very, very significant and, like Professor LaFlèche put, a transformative discovery, not only for us but for the area itself. It's like I said, every time I talk to somebody there on the ground, and when I talk to them, um, naturally occurring hydrogen, um, no or zero carbon emission, low footprint. We've had people around come and see us and see exactly the work that we're doing, and it just shows you the effect. Not all, just it's a very uplifting project for the whole area.
I did have a question come in about you and your experience, which usually I ask off the top of a space, but I didn't today. So can you just touch on that?
Well, I have a banking experience. Have been in investment banking for the last. Let me see. I started at 28. I'm 47, so 19 years now. Have been doing banking. Have been co-founding a lot of companies, mostly in the mining space. Was involved back in 2010 in that whole southern Quebec shale gas boom. I was one of the initial funders of Questair that Sheldon mentioned, and Michael Binion and his project, Jason De Silva, that group, helped them fund that. And you know what it is? It's a little, that experience also um, highlighted some of the errors that they did and some of the errors that shouldn't be repeated when you're trying to do such a transformative project. And what I mean by that is you really got to engage the communities from the get-go. You got to bring in a government partner from the get-go. You got to bring in a lot of government and research experts from the get-go. And that's really allowed me, and that's what has allowed us to build QIMC basically from the ground up, but really built on rock. And what I mean by that, built on science and concrete numbers and research.
Maybe now we should bring in Jackson here. Sheldon's said a few things. Jackson, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I mean, I think, Sheldon and John both touched on a lot of the really important parts. And maybe I'll just add, because I focus a lot on technology and, dived a lot, very different types of hydrogen technology. That would probably be where 99.9% of this whole hydrogen effort is geared towards, is trying to scale up all these different hydrogen technologies. And I can say I haven't seen any single company or project be able to do something where they are able to scale up, from a technology perspective, something regarding hydrogen that is both clean and cheap. And that's been and scalable, and that's been a barrier for every single project. I mean, there's a lot of, you hear about a lot of hype and different news about, we've got the next best hydrogen project and they're going to scale it up, but they ultimately run into different issues. I mean, the most common hydrogen production today is through a method called steam methane reform, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of hydrogen as being a potential holy grail, as Sheldon mentioned, because it requires a ton of CO2 to produce. And yes, it is cheap, but if we're trying to create a green economy here, we need something that is on par with fossil fuels in terms of cost, but as clean as something as solar or wind. And so we didn't know really much about natural hydrogen or anything at all until John brought it up, and we really saw as we dived in the potential for this to actually meet that criteria, something that's scalable, low cost, and extremely clean. This in theory should be a very low economic footprint. As John mentioned, should be able to be extracted for a much lower cost. And you can transport it. You can have it fuel cars, planes, and so forth. And so I think while there's a lot of money going into the hydrogen space, it's just beginning to be realized that there actually could be a solution here today now for hydrogen, and it's really actually on the ground perspective, as opposed to having to figure out a new technology and spending a gazillion dollars trying to build this up, with having technology risk, operational risk, and still the guarantee of being able to cost or be able to do it cleanly. So I think this idea of being able to extract from the ground from very low footprint, and have it meet all of these check marks really beats out almost any other type of even clean energy, because you are able to transport it, and because there is a potential here, I think, for a very large size, and as John mentioned, we have a very large amount of ground, a lot of really interesting hot spots. And so, this is going to be, I think, a very exciting as we continue to explore this, and as John said, react to the situations of the data coming in, because we think this area is kind of where to focus on, especially in the hydrogen space.
Well, I thank you for your comments, Jackson. Obviously, you sound like you have a lot to be optimistic about, and I think that leads into the next question for John, which is, what are the next steps here? What are the plans? Are you going to explore more drilling to better understand the extent of the deposit?
Well, what we're looking for, and thank you, Jackson. And just by the way, just to mention, Jackson is also chairman of the company. So Jackson is also chairman and director of QIMC, and we're fortunate to have Jackson on board. The next big release from our standpoint is line 4 and 5 are coming up shortly, and those are just going to confirm the magnitude of what we have from an east-west perspective. But what we're really excited is that big 9 to 10 kilometer north-south line that the guys are starting next week. That's going to be a really big line. Soil samples every 50 meters. We're starting from line 1. If you go to the map that was in the last press release, and we're going all the way down to line 5, cross-cutting basically the heart of the project. And we're looking really forward to that, because we're looking forward to the big numbers and the hot spots that are going to be coming out of that.
So lots
that's
of
going to be
flow, obviously.
Yeah, no, definitely lots of news flow. After that, we're doing a lot of geophysical work, September, October, and the beauty with working with the INRS, which is the equivalent of the Quebec government, is that the permitting is already streamlined. There's no the geophysical work, any type of drilling work, that's already streamlined, and the INRS does not require any type of, I don't want to say permits, but it's there's no issues on that front, and there's no delays on that front. You
So then
know,
I have to ask you from a speculator myself, an investor, if you know
yeah,
you're gonna, if you guys are really excited right now, you're in an interesting
yes.
spot because you're being reactive, which is kind of, that's, I don't hear that from many groups. That's because you've been surprised and the numbers are so big. You're gonna have a crap load of news flow. What's the marketing strategy? What's your guys' strategy to get the market really, speculating with these results and buying the stock?
Well, Sheldon, if you want to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is so early days. So, um, what I have started to do is the contacts that I have that I know are extremely interested in the resource market. Okay, and I'm talking about institutions and 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 significant investors. I know that everybody is going to be very interested in following this story. I mean, we're in Canada, we're in a resource country. Um, Everybody knows even what Canada has put out in terms of incentives around hydrogen. Also, all these green funds and so forth. So, the world is different today. So we had John interviewed on our YouTube account. So, we're pointing people so that, John, who articulates the company's prospects very well. And it's only beginning. We're like a week into this. This is not, a mature, worn out story. And so I'm just getting some serious players starting to do their due diligence, which is all around the technical side. And I think that this is going to catch on. I really believe that. So, I don't think this is like one of these things where you're suffocated because everybody else is screaming from the rooftop or the mountaintop. This is a very, very unique situation. So I think that there is going to be a natural, organic, viral response ultimately. When that begins, I don't know. Our market cap is sub $10 million for an asset that, well, it could be worth a lot. So, you know what? I'm extremely optimistic of how investors are going to respond once they discover the company.
Yeah.
And just to give you a little bit also of a background, we've already been approached by and have had conversations with very big international conglomerates who are interested, who have invested a lot of money in green hydrogen, and out of the blue contacted us on natural hydrogen, and wanted more info, wanted more data, wanted more calls. How can they get involved in it? So already we're attracting a lot of attention. In a favorable geopolitical, you know, um, situation, and also, I go back to our land package, and that's what really interests a lot of these big players, is we control the full rift, the graben, the Temiskaming graben. We've staked all of it. So we've staked the full 250 kilometers, square kilometers of the graben. So it's and we staked it because we've always said, you got to go big or go home, in the sense that there's no sense of staking a small area, then there's going to be an absolute staking chase after that, and you lose key areas. We just took the whole thing, and that's what's also a very, very big advantage for QIMC.
Yeah, I'd say it's a massive advantage being A, the first mover, and B, because our technical guys understand the geology of Quebec so well, we are able to this is an area we own like a region. So as we move down, the commercialization potential, and this is major companies are going to be interested in this. This isn't like, some little small claims and you got a little bit and whatever. If there's hydrogen in one part and it's commercial, there's a high likelihood it's going to repeat itself because the geology is homogeneous or near homogeneous. So this is a district scale play, which is entirely different. When I staked and put on my credit card newfound goals properties, we basically staked a district. So that's what you want to get to a level where you can actually turn a junior company into a major company. So very unique because, again, John, first mover, and now even after the initial results, not everybody's caught on to it, which is good because we can then increase our land position. So we own it all. So if we find hydrogen, it's going to be the Saudi Arabia of hydrogen.
I'd love to get this INRS team on a space with you guys. Just to talk a little bit more about the things on the ground.
Oh, of course, and we can organize it. We can organize Marc coming on and really explaining what he saw in the area and what and all the work that he's done on it.
Is there anything else we haven't touched on here, guys? We've been almost 45 minutes, and very exciting. I can, I understand the enthusiasm and the excitement, and I think that there's a lot of people listening right now that are, probably gonna either want to reach out to the company directly or, maybe see what funds they have available. But I know I am. I'll be letting the wife know we need to have a conversation about this one for sure. Yeah, is there anything we've left on the table that we should discuss?
If there's Sheldon, I think the story sells itself, and if there's any other questions from the listeners, we'll gladly reply.
Well, thanks everyone for joining today. If you're excited by what you hear, you're interested, please follow their handle. They'll be putting out news there for sure. You can always reach out to them. And actually, John, where is the best place what's the best way to contact you?
Well, what the best way I think is the info address, the info at QIMmaterials.com. That's the best one, and that's the one that we monitor regularly, given the amount of questions and requests we've been getting. Twitter is also very good as well. We're very active with Twitter. You could DM us on our Twitter page as well. And just going back a little bit to what you had mentioned in terms of the message itself. We posted recently our last video of our press release, and it had close to 300,000 views. On Twitter.
Yeah. No. That's insane.
So it just shows you really the scope and magnitude of what we have here.
Yep. Well, I would propose and throw it out there that we line up another space. Obviously you're going to have lots of news coming out here, maybe in 4 to 6 weeks, like early September, if we can get more of your technical team on here, and there'd be a lot more to talk about. But I'm really excited by this, and I'm not going to say I'm going to 100% buy stock, but I think there's a pretty high chance I probably will. So thanks today